Have you ever stumbled across something that you definitely didn't want to see? I thought so too, until I found some naked pictures of my wife on her phone. And you wouldn't believe what I found. Turns out she was sending them to her lover. I was completely shattered by this discovery, but I couldn't just sit back and watch her violate our family bond. I decided to get back at her for cheating, and you don't want to miss this story. One evening around 9 o'clock, I received a call from a caller I didn't know. My job involves a lot of people, calls, and in general, my number was, it seemed to me, almost all over the planet at once. I heard a rather young woman's voice on the phone. The girl turned to me by name and last name, without patronymic, and immediately asked to meet, and preferably now. Can you at least tell me who you are and what the actual question is? She gives me the name of my wife and tells me that I need this meeting more than the lady who called me. Tell me, is this her number by any chance? I called and a woman's voice answered and dictated my wife's cell phone numbers to me. Anyway, after a short conversation, I said, "If you insist, we can actually meet." She says to me, "Well, give me the address." I say, "I think we'll be fine. I think we'll be fine on the store floor." And I tell her the address of a nearby convenience store. I put on my jacket, and while I was going down in the elevator, I wondered who it could be. Two thoughts came to mind. There seemed to be no enemies, and to lure me out of the house of some kind of bad intent, I think, cannot be. That left me with the possibility that it was a prank on my wife. She was kind of at work at this point. Their flower store is open 24 hours a day, and my wife has shifts. I'll tell you right away that what it turned out to be could really be called both a trick and a prank from my wife all at once. But better in order. Anyway, I went downstairs, reached the store, and a few minutes later a cab pulled up. A girl comes out, about 23 years old, and immediately she recognized me, though I think I see her for the first time. We said hello. She pulls out her wallet and phone from her pocket. She shows it to me and says that I have been living with my classmate for 2 years. We have a relationship and everything, and we are preparing for the wedding. Of course, we live in a rented apartment, and I have a part-time job, and so does he. And he has a car. And with our study schedule, he allegedly kind of found a job and kind of career in a flower store. That's when I got tense after that sentence. In general, while he leaves to deliver orders, but there are shifts, including in the evening after school, she is there to clean their apartment, but also cooks food, in general, as at all. And in the course of one such cleaning, she found some unfamiliar purse. He had never worn a purse or a wallet in his life. I of course reached inside, and there was a SIM card. I put it into an old phone and the network is working. Well, it means that the card they used recently. I goes the message on the SIM card, and there is this, look, and pulls the phone back into my hands. I twist it in my hands and look, there are a few messages from a couple of weeks ago about how cool and unusual it was, and that he'd have to take a shower in the middle of the night. I look at who they were sent to, and the recipient is my wife's number. She's listed on the SIM card as Margot, even though she's been Masha all her life. I looked through the phone. All these messages, as well as my wife's contact, was only stored on the SIM card. That is, when he took this SIM card out of his cell phone, my wife's contact and text messages were gone. When he put the SIM card back in, all of this, along with the SIM card, appeared in the phone there again. "What is your name?" I asked the madam, Aliona. Aliona, I don't know how to respond right now. Perhaps I should say thank you, but you understand the absurdity of the situation. Suddenly, a stranger appeared in front of me and said that everything I knew about my life and my relationship with my wife turned out to be the opposite. To make a long story short, we were standing there in silence. I, being a little shocked, then, of course, wrote down her number and the date of these messages, and then parted ways with this Aliona at home. The time was 12 o'clock in the morning. I tried to sleep, but the night turned into a detective. I tried to figure out what inconsistencies in Alina's story, but luckily or unfortunately, I did not find any. But except for one. On the morning, I was already sitting at work, and I called Alina. Alina, how did you actually find me? Well, you took this SIM card. You saw there an unfamiliar number. As we found out, this is my wife's number, but how did they find me? You called me right away, didn't you? So you didn't believe me. I got on his social networking page and looked up Masha Margarita as his friend. I came across your wife's face, and I remembered that I had seen her when he and I went to his work together once. And she found you and her friends. You have the same last name. You were married, but you have on your page and your phone number. Well, that's all. There is no mystery. That day, I immediately remembered a conversation I had with my wife about her job and her desire for financial independence. I told her that you want to earn money and not to sit on someone else's neck. This is certainly commendable, but you know this is your night shifts. Masha, in short, if anything, then immediately it will be over. In general, I called Alina again and asked to give me that SIM card with the phone, at least for a day or two. When I got home in the evening, my wife had the day off, and my cell phone was lying on the chair as usual. I waited until she came back from the kitchen, stood up, blocked the front door to our room, and right in front of her took yes, and called her on her cell phone is from this SIM card from a lover. That was a show, although now it even seems cheerful to me. But at that moment, I do not know how I restrained myself and do not advise anyone to do so. When my wife suddenly started batting her eyes and realizing she was never going to leave the room, she suddenly and quickly began to reset the call. Everyone probably would have behaved differently. I take the phone of my lover out of my jeans, and right in front of her eyes, I dial it again. Her face, literally paralyzed, suddenly began to breathe as if on this chair, almost drowned. I say so, and here's the deal. Besides you what? I heard nothing else intelligible from her at that moment, of course. You'd be surprised, but this is not the end of the story. After crying and sobbing from the bathroom room, she came to the hall ostensibly to confess. I'll show you, look, she told me, and started her computer. And then I was more surprised than when I found out about her secret admirer. She showed me that with this fellow she, well, sort of talked 6 weeks ago by mail and invited him to visit us. Well, why do I need this information? I asked her and got the answer, after which I got even more angry. I mean, I was not planning anything serious, and neither was he. It's just communication and the text you read. It only touches on what once happened there virtually on the internet. Everything that is written about it being cool and so on is an accident on the internet and nothing more. But there were a few mutual photos there, that's all. In reality, we are only colleagues. We do not even see each other especially. But what is he for? He is a courier. I see. So we were communicating at the post office. That's why there is nothing in the text messages. In general, admitting a small part of their betrayal to avoid responsibility for the big one, it is a well-known technique. Only in the first place, here's what they do online is not better than in reality. And secondly, I am too old to believe that online they are like this. Well, in reality, when they have a night shift, they sit, drink tea, and do not look at each other. In short, the divorce, the apartment to me, but her car was bought before the wedding, unfortunately. And although most of it paid, of course it now no way to prove it. At the end, I want to say about this work, probably someone will say that the night shift and so on, and if released, then they themselves are also to blame. I think that night shifts are just one of the factors, but not the decisive one. If someone wants to cheat, he can cheat at work at night, or even in the staircase during the day, when he is taking out the trash. Keeping partners locked up is a naive idea. On the contrary, if you want to get to know your partner completely for real, you have to give him a little freedom and see the result. As if one infidelity wasn't enough, this woman arranged a second one, this time already with another man. But she failed to conceal her despicable actions, and her husband found mountains of messages and compromising photos. Determined not to let it go unpunished, he came up with a unique punishment so that his wife would never forget the pain and suffering she had caused him. So what did he come up with? Find out. Stay tuned for the rest of this video. The story I'm about to tell you happened a few years ago in my already cheerful life. It was, as I now remember, a Tuesday, and why do I remember? Because the weekend, which began on Friday, played a crucial role in that story. My wife, Elena, had been telling me all week to go and visit my parents in the next town. And remarkably enough, it was suggested that I go there alone. And around Tuesday, her final, I would even say the last in our dream in marriage, has met her proposal. I just planned to go on the weekend, she said, with my relatives, and taking Natasha from work to go to the mountains to a camping site. Well, this Friday we have a short day, and me and Natasha, this is her girlfriend divorce, we will go straight from work for a couple of days until Sunday. You and I would hit two birds with one stone. We'd leave the daughter at my mom's. I'd get a break from both work and the department. The daughter would see both grandma and grandpa, and you'd visit your parents, and you haven't been to a bad place in a while. Thanks for the advice, I told her, and at that moment, and especially not smelled a catch from her. To be honest, I didn't mind taking a break from each other either. At that time, our relationship with her was, to put it mildly, cool, but at the time of the proposal to go away for the weekend, our relationship with her in general was the winter. I will take a few seconds to explain that this is not her and my first marriage. Both she and I had a child. And at the time she and I got together and got married, we definitely weren't planning a third, and as it turned out a little later, that's a good thing. So my son lived with his mother, but he came to stay with us a lot, and the daughter of Elena lived with us. These are deep details, but they will all play a part in the story I'm telling you now. Anyway, the weekend was approaching, and for the first time, I was suddenly alert when, as it approached, my wife was more and more cheerful than before. Well, what a couple of relatives. What's there to jump out of your pants? And it turned out that there is a lot. In general, Thursday, we are sitting in the kitchen. I had to see the weather tomorrow. I may have to go tomorrow to the intercity. I take her mobile. There is a password. My wife works as a regular manager, and her phone is always in her pocket. She never carries it even in her bag. What's she password there? Why, although now, almost everyone has a password. Anyway, it didn't really surprise me that night. I just went to my smartphone in the hall and looked at the weather there. The next day is Friday. I kind of have tonight or tomorrow morning to go. And Lena suddenly needed an umbrella. Well, kind of on a hike at lunchtime on Friday. As it turned out, the umbrella is in my trunk in the car. I was at work at the time. Well, come and get the tourist. I told her on the phone, went to the parking lot, took the umbrella, and threw it straight into my office with my boss and me. I closed the closet and went into the hall to distribute the goods. I was working at that time in an auto parts store. I was something like an assistant to the owner. Well, an assistant in this store. As it turned out, he was in great need. Since the title of this story includes my boss, I must say that he was, in general, quite interesting guy. He recruited everybody in the sales clerk and was surprised by the lack of cash and the fact that some spare parts had a strange feature to shrink or get hard every time right before the revision. In short, the spare parts store has something to take, and then there is somewhere to dispose of. All need parts, and even if you take it and give his husband at home, too, is good. In general, Mikulich could not overcome all this. He arranged audits 100 times a half year, and thus brought even more losses, because you have to close the store every time for a revision. He also introduced some kind of electronic accounting system, which made things worse. The contingent that went on a paltry salary with such electronic devices in sales was not friendly from the word go. And with their introduction, the pardons accounting almost got ruined. The last and decisive question was the video surveillance everywhere and on everyone. We calculated with him how much it would cost to install in all rooms, storage of all these records, maintenance of all of this, and so on, and it came out a tidy sum. I remember offering him at the time, and it was my offer that also played a trick on my divorce from my dear wife. I said then, "Sergei Mikhailovich, can we do things differently? Cameras are good, but maybe raise the salaries of all salespeople, and on more or less good salaries other people will come to work. With a higher knowledge of spare parts, but maybe also with other moral qualities. No, the salaries are at the bottom now. That's why we have such a situation with shortages." He says no, Alexei, a person's salary and whether or not he takes someone else's money have nothing to do with each other. If a person finds it unacceptable, he will not take it, neither on a salary of 1,000,000, nor on a salary of 100 rubles. And the fact that they have little knowledge of spare parts, so those who buy often know better themselves what they need and what not. So that's your offer passed. It does not work that way. Well, it's debatable argument, but all the losses are not mine. I do not pay salaries here too, so I gave an idea, and he can do what he wants. The cameras were put in after all, and who knew they would be the ones that would play a role in making me, well, kind of a bachelor again. Back to Friday. My wife arrived, of course, on time. I was in the hall, as I said, distributing the merchandise and telling her how to properly account for this particular item. She walks into the hall. I tell her, "Wait there for 5 minutes. I'll finish with what's on the table. I'll go and open your office." She stood and looked at the oil filters. Then I looked and saw that she was no longer in the room. I went to the other room. She was not there either. I go into our office with Mikulich, where, of course, there is also a monitor which displays all the video surveillance. My wife is standing outside, and it is drizzling rain, and ours did not just drop in for an umbrella. Standing outside the door, outside under the visor, and talking on the phone. I need something to eat while I eat my lunch. I put what I took from home in the microwave, stand there, stare at the monitor, and wait for her to talk enough. She goes inside, walks down the hall, and walking across the hall, she says into her phone, "And I'm kissing you," and she hangs up. It is clear that our 2 cameras outside have no sound, but in the hall there is sound on one of the cameras. And I heard this phrase, much to my shock, but there was nothing else. But it could be Natashenka, my friend, I began to think. But the tone. My wife said this phrase in a completely different tone that she is talking to her girlfriend. With Natasha, talking on the phone usually almost goes into a squeak. And here, well, somehow too confident and maybe even condescendingly or even mockingly with a sneer, his wife walks into the office. "Here, take it away." I pointed her to our umbrella and asked her to give me her cell phone, supposedly to call me on mine. Otherwise, I cannot find it here. I opened up her journaled Vankov, and there the last call was 45 minutes ago, and it was on my cell phone. And the conversation that I just saw the camera, there is no reason. Gone. But apparently, like those spare parts, it had shrunk or fainted before the inspection. Hello, though, I thought at the time. But we're off. When you get to the parents, text me, said my beloved wife, and ran away. I sat on the chair, twirling my fork in my hands and thinking about which way I should think now and what in general is going on here. I had lunch, finished all my work, text comes in. Wife. "We got there all right. I can't reach you. The connection is bad here. You text if there's anything. You don't call." Great. I call back on purpose, and the phone is already disconnected. It's almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon. At first I thought I'd call my girlfriend, who went there too. Maybe she has a different mobile operator, and it is there better than the one my wife. I call my girlfriend. She keeps ringing, but she does not pick up. I call again. It's the same. I think about my daughter. Where is she? It's been 4 days. Is she already at her grandmother's, or do I have to take her there? I call her. She's already at Grandma and Grandpa's, and she adds, Everything is fine. I ate and told my mom, too, and told her all this too. And then suddenly, it turns out that she just talked to my mom and that my mom called from her main phone. And then all these coincidences somehow didn't add up well at all. I got in my car and took a ride to, guess who? To that divorcee girlfriend who works with my wife and who left with her and her in-laws right after lunch for the campground. I arrive at their joint work with my wife. I open the door in their room, and there sits this Natasha and looks at me with round eyes. But how is the weather at the camp, and why do we not pick up the phone? I ask her. She begins to tell me that she knows nothing. I say to her, Lena, where? You better tell me while I am kind. She particularly nothing worthwhile, of course, did not say, but dropped a phrase that this, say, my friend, in the sense that I will not turn her in. And then she adds to me that you sort it out on your own. I will not cover anyone else here. Pissed off. In short, came to our house and about 11 p.m. comes SMS call. Subscriber, that is, my wife is online. By the time I reach the phone and call her back, she was already in her area again. But apparently the girlfriend, that's a warning via text message that she is looking for her husband, as well as the whole scheme with the camping resort is not for hire. Saturday passed, the wife in the network did not appear. I think, well, then you can safely make a decision. I quietly gathered around the house all her stuff and put forward to the front door in a pile. She did not come until Sunday, went into the apartment, and generally not surprised by what she saw. RSP's girlfriend, of course, had already told her everything. Lena, sighing, began to look at the bags, well, and try to drag them out the door. And I said, how can you not be ashamed of yourself? Well, as a matter of fact, if, in principle. She replied, and what do you have to say? You can see for yourself what kind of relations we have had lately. Moreover, if I start to justify myself here, you wouldn't believe me anyway. Anyway, my surprise that Sunday was boundless. Even caught red-handed and almost in front of witnesses, and even her behavior, proving that I understood everything correctly, she still did not confess to me. Apparently thinking to leave room for maneuvering in the future, in case I suddenly decided one day to talk and maybe return. So there you go. Although the cameras at work is not much of a crasher, but as it turns out, they are quite capable of calculating the betrayal. If you like this story, do not forget to rate it and give it a like. Thank you for watching.